Here is a question for you. Think back to the autumn of 1963. Britain's most forward-thinking car company walks into the London Motor Show with a brand new executive saloon, 6 cylinders, fully independent suspension on all 4 corners, disc brakes at the front, rack and pinion steering, and an interior that could genuinely embarrass cars costing twice the price. The press falls over itself to praise it. Sales records are broken. Over the next 14 years, 318,000 examples leave the factory. And yet today, you can drive through almost any town in Britain or America and never once spot one. Ask a younger enthusiast to name an important British executive car from the 1960s and they will say Jaguar, perhaps Rover. The Triumph 2000 barely registers. How does a car that important simply disappear from the collective memory? In 1963, Britain was a country in a strange kind of transition. The post-war austerity of the 1950s had given way to something more complicated, a creeping optimism, tempered by industrial uncertainty. Harold Macmillan had recently told the country it had never had it so good, but there were sharp cracks beneath that confidence. The car industry, though, was booming. Hire purchase agreements were making private motoring accessible to a new class of buyer, the professional man, the middle manager, the sales director. He wanted something that said he had arrived but without the running costs of a Jaguar. He wanted refinement at a price that didn't require an apology. Standard Triumph, based in Coventry, understood that man completely. And the car they built for him was remarkable. Section 1. The Long Road, from Zebu to Barb. The story of the Triumph 2000 actually begins in frustration. As far back as 1957, Standard Triumph's engineers had been working on a new executive saloon, codenamed Zebu. The concept was ambitious for its time. A front-mounted 6-cylinder engine, a rear-mounted transaxle gearbox, McPherson struts at the front, and a sleek, modern body with a reverse-slope rear screen. On paper, it looked like the future. The problem was timing and money. Ford was developing something that looked alarmingly similar in concept. The Consul Classic and Standard Triumph's finances were eroding fast. Zebu was quietly shelved. Then, in 1961, Leyland Motors stepped in and acquired Standard Triumph International. That acquisition didn't just save the company from collapse. It opened the taps on development funding and gave engineering director Harry Webster the mandate to start again, properly, with a new project name. Barb. Webster's team made pragmatic decisions under intense time pressure. Gone was the complex rear transaxle. In its place came a conventional longitudinal engine and gearbox layout. The separate chassis was abandoned entirely in favor of a modern monocoque body structure. The suspension retained the spirit of Zebu, fully independent at all 4 wheels, using McPherson struts at the front and semi-trailing arms at the rear, but with far greater engineering refinement. For the body itself, Webster turned to an Italian genius, Giovanni Michelotti. Michelotti was already well acquainted with Triumph, having styled the Herald, but the brief he received for Barb was quite different. This was not a small family car. This was to be a car that could hold its head up in the professional and managerial world. Michelotti delivered his final styling proposal by the autumn of 1961, completed in a remarkable 3-month period. His vision was clean, elegant, and unmistakably European. A long bonnet, a distinctive 6-window greenhouse that gave spaciousness and light, and a restrained use of chrome that read as confidence rather than flashiness. In-house designers, Les Moore and Arthur Ballard, then refined the proposal for production. The car was formally named the Triumph 2000 in the summer of 1963. The development team had set themselves the target of being ready for the October 1963 London Motor Show, knowing full well that Rover was simultaneously preparing its own radically engineered 2-liter saloon, the P6. The race to the show was extraordinary, from a clean sheet of paper to a production-ready motor car in just over 2 years. That is a timeline that would make most modern manufacturers go pale. The Triumph 2000 was officially unveiled at the London Motor Show on the 15th of October, 1963. The Rover P6 had appeared just 1 week earlier. Britain had two completely new executive saloons on the market at almost exactly the same moment, and between them, they would define an entirely new market segment in the United Kingdom. Section 2. What you actually got for your money. Let us talk about what the man handing over his money in early 1964 actually received. The price at launch was £905 basic, or approximately £1,094 once purchase tax was included. For the period, that represented serious value. Under the bonnet sat a 1,998 cubic centimeter overhead valve, inline six-cylinder engine. This unit had its roots in the six-cylinder standard Vanguard, but Triumph's engineers had sharpened it considerably for the new application. The compression ratio was raised to 8.5 to 1, and twin Stromberg 150 CD carburetors were fitted, lifting power to a claimed 90 brake horsepower, compared to 80 from the older Vanguard application. It was not a high-revving engine by sports car standards, but it was smooth and long-legged in a way that suited exactly what this car was intended to do. Standard transmission was a 4-speed manual gearbox. Optional overdrive was available, which made long-distance cruising genuinely relaxed. If you preferred, there was also a 3-speed Borg-Warner automatic, a sensible and well-matched option for the professional commuter. The chassis engineering deserves particular attention. Fully independent suspension at all four corners was not standard practice in the British executive car market of the time. The front used McPherson struts. The rear used semi-trailing arms, both suspended on coil springs. The steering was rack and pinion, giving a directness that surprised more than a few road testers who expected something vague and comfortable. Brakes were servo-assisted discs at the front and drums at the rear. The wheelbase was 106 inches, giving the sort of interior space the target buyer demanded. Autocar described the car's prospects as golden, praising its competitive pricing, spacious interior, and assured handling. Motorsport echoed that assessment, highlighting what it called the car's exceptional road manners and silence. A saloon at launch, the Triumph 2000 gained an estate body style in 1965, the shell partly constructed by car bodies in Coventry. This was a practical, well-proportioned load carrier that never quite looked like a compromise, which was an achievement in itself. In Australia, a special variant known as the 2000 MD, the letters standing for Managing Director, was built in tiny numbers, approximately 100 in total, and featured knock-off wire wheels, triple Stromberg carburetors, and the battery relocated to the boot. Section 3. The battle with Rover and the market it created. If you were in the market for a 2-liter executive saloon in 1964, you faced one of the most interesting purchasing decisions the British car industry ever offered. The Rover P6 was a genuinely radical machine, a base unit body structure, De Dion rear suspension on later models, and a 4-cylinder engine of modern design. It won the very first European Car of the Year award in 1964. The engineering press adored it. The Triumph 2000 answered back with more doors of genuine usefulness, a 6-cylinder engine where Rover offered only 4 in the early years, and arguably more interior refinement where it mattered to the working professional. Together, the two cars captured over 80% of the UK market for 2-liter saloons by the mid-1960s. They did not cannibalize each other so much as they created demand where almost none had existed. Production during the Mach 1 years was brisk. By the end of its first full year, in 1964, approximately 18,490 units had been built. The car was a genuine commercial success, and it contributed directly to Standard Triumph's recovery from the precarious financial position that had almost destroyed it only a few years earlier. Throughout the Mach 1 production period from the launch in 1963 through to 1969, only modest updates were made. The most significant improvement came in October 1966, when the ventilation system received a meaningful overhaul. The original system had been described charitably as previously rather ineffective, with eyeball vents added in the dashboard center to address the deficiency. When the final accounting was done, Mk1 saloon and estate production reached 113,157 units, a remarkable output for a manufacturer of standard Triumph size. Section 4. The Lucas Gamble. Enter the 2.5 PI. In October 1968, just over a year before the Mark II replacement arrived, Triumph made a decision that would define, and in some ways, trouble the car's reputation for years to come. They fitted petrol injection. The new model was designated the 2.5 PI, the PI standing for petrol injection, and it used a Lucas Automotive mechanical fuel injection system. The engine was bored out to 2,498 cubic centimeters. In the saloon, this injected 6 produced 132 net horsepower, with a very useful 153 pound-feet of torque, available at just 2,000 revolutions per minute. To take advantage of that torque, the 2.5 PI also received a taller 3.45 rear axle ratio from the Triumph TR5, wider 185-section radial tires, and an alternator in place of the original generator necessary to power the injection system's high-pressure fuel pump. The performance improvement was substantial, where the standard 2000 needed approximately 15 seconds to reach 60 miles per hour and topped out around 97 miles per hour. The injected 2.5 PI trimmed the sprint to 60 to under 10 seconds and reached a top speed of more than 115 miles per hour. The 2.5 PI was, in 1968, genuinely fast. It was also the first British production saloon car with petrol injection, that distinction having gone to the TR5 sports car just a year earlier, in 1967. The price reflected the technology. £1,133 basic, over £200 more than the equivalent 2000. Including purchase tax, buyers were committing to approximately £1,487, 19 shillings and 9 pence. Despite that, the injected car sold more than 9,000 units in its first year of availability. But there were problems. The Lucas injection system required the fuel pump to run at pressures of over 110 pounds per square inch, powered by a unit that had originally been derived from a windscreen wiper motor. In hot climates especially, that pump would overheat, causing fuel vaporization and leaving the car stranded until the pump cooled. In Australia, the problem was severe. There were also complaints about rough idling, a tendency to stall in cornering if the fuel level fell too low, and the constant drone of the pump. The system required regular attention fuel filters, precise calibration, and when something went wrong, it was expensive to diagnose and repair. Triumph addressed the rough idle issue in 1973 by fitting a milder camshaft, the same profile used in later TR6 PI cars, which trimmed peak power but improved tractability. Many owners considered that a worthwhile trade. The camshaft change, combined with the car's demanding maintenance requirements, would eventually seal the injection system's fate. Section 5. The Mark II and the British Leyland Shadow. In October 1969, the Mark II range was unveiled. Once again, Michelotti had been responsible for the restyling, and the result was a subtle but effective update that gave the car a more contemporary front end, clearly related to the then upcoming Triumph Stag Grand Tourer. The basic architecture was unchanged: monocoque body, fully independent suspension, disc front brakes, rack and pinion steering. But the body was slightly longer, and the aerodynamics were marginally better as a result. The Mark II range now comprised the entry-level 2000, the injected 2.5 PI, and from 1972, a carbureted 2000. 498 cubic centimeter model designated the 2500. Why it took Triumph until 1972 to offer the larger engine in carbureted form, given that a carbureted 2.5-liter had been available in North American specification TRs since. 1968 is one of those decisions that characterize British Leyland's management style of the period. That context matters. British Leyland Motor Corporation had been formed in 1968 through the merger of Leyland Motors and British Motor Holdings, creating one of the largest vehicle manufacturers in the world and almost immediately one of the most chaotically managed. By 1970, BLMC management was struggling to make sense of a product line in which Triumph, Rover, Austin, Morris, and Jaguar were often competing directly with one another at the expense of all parties involved. The Triumph 2000 range received a further facelift in 1974, adopting a stag-style radiator grille and adding the 2500 TC model. The TC suffix, despite sounding like twin carburetors, actually denoted a higher equipment level, though all non-injected 2.5-litre cars did indeed use twin carburetors. The 2500 TC produced 99 brake horsepower and was specifically designed to offer an alternative to the PI for buyers who had grown wary of the injection system's temperament. In June 1975, the range-topping 2500S arrived. This was the most accomplished version of the car. 14-inch GKN alloy wheels in the style of the Stag, a front anti-roll bar, softer front springs for improved ride quality, tinted glass, and twin SU-HS6 carburetors feeding a revised cylinder head shared engineering with the TR6, producing 106 brake horsepower. It was, by any measure, a properly sorted executive car. That same month, the petrol-injected 2.5 PI quietly disappeared from showrooms. The Lucas system had never fully escaped its reputation, however unfairly in some respects, and the carburetted S offered comparable performance with far less anxiety on the part of both owner and mechanic. Production of the entire 2000 and 2500 range ended in May 1977. The replacement British Leyland's new Rover SD1 was styled by David Bash, powered by the Rover 3.5-litre V8, and won the European Car of the Year award for 1977. It was a completely different proposition. There is a certain irony in the ending. The 6-cylinder engines that would have been Triumph's natural successors to the 2000's power plant, a 2300 and a 2600, were eventually fitted to the Rover SD1. In the 1980s, as the Rover range-topping 6-cylinder variants, Triumph's engineering outlived the car that bore the name. The very last Triumph 2000 to leave the production line was a 2500 S Estate, registration BOL 87V. It is kept today at the Heritage Motor Centre at Gaydon, in Warwickshire. Section 6. The numbers that tell the real story. Let us be specific about what the production records show, because the numbers are remarkable for a manufacturer that many in this period regarded as a second-tier British company. The Mark I range, from 1963 to 1969, produced 113,157 units across saloon and estate forms. The Mark II range, from 1969 to 1977, added further substantial numbers across the 2000, 2500, 2.5 PI, 2500 TC, and 2500S variants. Total production across all models and all years reached approximately 317,000 to 318,000 units, a number that, for a mid-sized British executive car of that era, represents a genuine commercial success. The 2.5-litre PI also sold to government and official use. The New Zealand Prime Minister at the time, Sir Robert Muldoon, privately owned a white 2500S and was known to drive himself to work in it. The car was exported in completely knocked-down kit form to New Zealand, where local assembly continued at the New Zealand Motor Corporation's plant in Nelson until March 1979, 2 full years after UK production had ceased. In South Africa, later 2500 TC and S models were badged and sold as the Triumph Chicane between 1973 and 1978. As for current values, these cars remain modestly priced relative to their historical importance. A clean, well-maintained 2000 Mark I saloon in the United Kingdom typically trades in the range of £3,000 to £6,000 at the time of this script. The 2.5 PI, with its complexity and the now fashionable appeal of the Lucas injection system among enthusiasts, commands somewhat more, with really excellent examples occasionally reaching £10,000 or beyond. The 2500S, as the final and most developed expression of the car, has attracted a small but dedicated following. In any condition, running examples are becoming less common, and the parts and knowledge base supported by the Triumph 2000, 2500, and 2.5 register in the United Kingdom remains accessible to those willing to commit. So why did Britain forget this car? Part of the answer lies in what came after. The Rover SD1 was a showstopper, a genuinely beautiful, aerodynamic fastback with a V8 engine that made headlines on the day it was launched. The Triumph 2000 was quietly professional. The SD1 was theatrical. In the war for automotive memory, theatre tends to win. Part of the answer also lies in British Leyland itself. As the 1970s wore on, the BL brand became synonymous, sometimes unfairly, with industrial decline, strike action, and quality problems. Cars associated with that period have often been tarred with the same brush, regardless of their individual merits. But perhaps the deepest reason is simpler than either of those. The Triumph 2000 did its job so well, so quietly, and so reliably that it never gave anyone a story to tell. It was the car that took the sales director to his appointments on time, that carried the family to Scotland on holiday without drama, that started on cold January mornings and asked relatively little in return. In an era when British cars were routinely criticized for unreliability, this was no small achievement. A car that sells 318,000 units over 14 years earns genuine praise from every major contemporary road test publication, and outlasts the company that built it by having its engines transplanted into successor models. That is not a forgotten car. That is a misunderstood one. Giovanni Michelotti drew its lines in 3 months, in 1961. Harry Webster's engineers built it in just over 2 years. And it wore the road between Coventry and wherever you needed to go, with a quiet, 6-cylinder dignity that deserves rather more than the silence it has received. Now, have any of you owned one of these? A 2000, a 2.5 PI, perhaps a 2500S estate? What did it feel like to drive in the years when they were everywhere? I would genuinely love to read your stories in the comments below. If this kind of deep dive into the cars that shaped an era is what you come here for, please do subscribe and hit the notification bell. It costs you nothing, and it means a great deal. And if you found this video worth your time, a like helps this channel reach the people who care about these stories. Thank you for watching. These cars, and the men who built them, deserve to be remembered properly, and on this channel, we intend to do exactly that.